Now, I like nurses just as much as the next guy, and there's lots of different ways to meet them, but probably the worst is in the emergency room after you've crashed up on your motorcycle. This video is going to be about armor, specifically for the upper body. I've got a lot of different armor types here, and I've probably crashed in most of them, so I've got some hands-on experience with how they performed in real life. Before we get to that, we're going to look at some boobs some more, and we're going to talk about a couple of different qualities of armor that we want to have. So if we look at different types of armor, they're all going to have different qualities or aspects to them that may be more valuable to one person in one type of terrain versus another. But thinking of things like, say, for example, a tank, you've got a couple different types of armor considerations going on. One is deflection, so the ability of the armor to deflect an impact. The more it can deflect an impact, the less force is transmitted to any particular point and has to be absorbed by the underlying armor. So another shape that tends to favor deflection would be if you look at a knight's armor. There's a lot of curves and things in the armor to make the blow glance off and deflect. Now, if the blow can't be deflected, then we have to look at what type of force is coming against the armor. Is it a blunt force like a hammer, or is it a sharp force like a knife? And in trail terms, we could say, is it a rock that's hit us, or that we fell against, or have we come up against like a sharp stick or something like that? After the armor deflects whatever impact it is and protects you from penetration, there's going to be leftover energy from the impact. And if it's just a little tumble, it's not going to be a lot. If you go off your bike at 35 miles an hour and go through the bars like I did, on one occasion, it could be a lot of force. And so then you get into the absorption ability of the armor. So modern MX armor, off-road armor, has a lot of different material types that are designed to take the leftover force of an impact and disperse it through the structure of the armor and try to keep it from reaching your body. And that plays into the CE certifications. When you see a piece of armor that is CE certified, whether it's level 1 or level 2, that means that that piece of armor has passed a test that when they hit it with a certain amount of force, only a certain amount of leftover force is allowed to proceed through the armor structure and reach the body underneath. Now, it's about the only rating system there is out there, so it's better than nothing. But one thing to be aware of is there is a CE rating that you see oftentimes in chest protectors where it's rated as a stone or roost guard. That means that it is rated to protect the wearer against impacts from roost or stone from the bike in front of you. It really doesn't have anything to do with force applied to the body after a crash. Now, off-road armor generally has two different types of main categories that we could look at. One is the hard armor type, which is usually a hard plastic HDPE shell, and then underneath that is some type of foam lining, and it usually has a foam lining that goes around the edges of the hard parts so that they don't dig it into you. It could be anything from just a chest back clamshell type protector to something like the Liat HD 5.5, which includes shoulders and rib protection in that. The other type is going to be your soft armor or compression suit that you would generally wear underneath a jersey. Typically they are all-in-one pieces, sometimes with detachable sleeves, but they usually include the elbow guards, shoulders, front and back, and sometimes rib protection, but it's rare to actually see that. Now, in my own armor purchases and what I've used, I first started off with a Liat 4.5, which is a clamshell front-back type protector, and I wasn't super happy with that, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I tried the Liat HD 5.5. it was just really hot and the shoulder attachment was goofy. So I sent that back. I mean, it was hot even around the house. Next, I tried the Force Field Flight Armor, which was front, back, shoulders, elbows, CE2 everywhere. It was built very well. Quality was impeccable. Unfortunately, I would have to go from an XL to a 3XL jersey just to put it on, and there was just no way I was going to be able to wear that and actually ride in the summer. So I had been wearing the Liat 4.5, and that's actually what I was wearing in the accident, the crash at the beginning of this video. And it wasn't that great of an armor. And it's interesting because it's rated CE level 2, front and rear. But it has a couple flaws, like all clamshells. It has no rib protection whatsoever. It really doesn't have any collarbone protection against, say, the edge of your helmet digging in. Now, when I broke my collarbone in that crash, it was probably because I landed right on the tip of my shoulder as soon as the bike went over. So really, in that situation, no armor would help. But there are plenty of guys who break their collarbone when they have a little off and the edge of their helmet digs into their collarbone. So something like a neck brace or a armor that has some padding there would definitely help in that type of situation. In addition to breaking my collarbone, I broke like 6 ribs and like bruised my scapula. It was just a mess. The other thing I noticed about the crash was that I had had a prior crash where I was wearing D3O chest, back, shoulder pads, like in a, my quote-unquote adventure jacket. I'd actually had a couple crashes that day, and then a really big one. And I noticed that the D3O absorbed a ton more energy versus the Liat 4.5. They're both CE level 2, but in real-world use, the armor that absorbed force the best left me the least injured. Everywhere I had the D3O pads, I didn't have a bruise or anything. Whereas with the crash with the Liat 4.5 on, which is basically just a hard plastic shell with a pretty thin foam behind it and around the edges, my entire chest, abdomen, back, everything was bruised. Some pretty bad ones. I mean, just like a giant bruise. So I went looking again for a new type of armor. And after talking to some guys, I decided to try what's called a Techvest. Techvest is made by a company called Tech Rider in Canada. They originally started off making armor for snowmobile guys. To race snowmobile, you have to have a certain type of armor, which is generally a Techvest, and it also has a hard plastic on the outside of it in order to prevent penetration by the snowmobile tracks. But then they started making off-road armor for bikes, for dual sport riding. And the one I got initially was called the Rally Max. Now, the line of products they have designed for dual sport or off-road use for bikes are going to be lighter weight than the snowmobile ones. They're generally going to have more ventilation as well. But the type of armor that's inside a Techvest is going to be the same type of armor. The Techvest itself is a cloth shell, high denier, and inside of that is what they call the armor sandwich. So the first layer is ultra-high molecular weight plastic, which is about 8 times more cut resistant than HDPE plastic, which is what typical off-road armor is made out of. Then there's going to be a layer of EVA foam that's closed cell, so it does not absorb any water. It won't get waterlogged and get heavy. And then behind that is another layer of the plastic. And that is like a laminated composite armor that's inside of there. There's lots of different models of Techvest. I have the Rally Max, which is designed to be worn with a neck brace. There's a regular Rally that is not designed for a neck brace. The neck opening is a little different. I also have a model called the Crossover, which is kind of an interesting model, and that's also designed for a neck brace. But if you look at their website, I would say probably the most popular ones for bike riders are going to be the Rally versions, the Freestyle, the Crossover, which is going to be the lightest weight, most breathable one, And then there's a model called the Outback, which is basically a crossover, except for it has a modular pouch system on the front and rear. And you can get an optional pouch for the back that can hold a water bladder and still have room also to slip a D30 pad in. So it's pretty cool. I know one guy down in Australia who bought one, and he says he's pretty happy with it. Now, I have an extensive number of reviews on the armors I use on advrider.com, and down in the description I'll put links to each one of my reviews. Here I am getting ready to do one in my infamous yellow shirt. I use the yellow shirt so that you can more easily see what's covered and what's not. Just for comparison purposes and to have a reference, the first set of pics is the Liat 4.5. You could see the front and the rear coverage as well as the side. And one thing to notice about this type of typical MX or off-road armor is where the front coverage ends. Typically the back will cover from the shoulder blades down to the top of the tailbone, but the fronts on the armor typically stop just below the level of the rib cage. Now, I have seen a number of YouTube videos. Chronicles of Solid from Australia has one where his buddy had a little accident or something, and he flew forward into the bars, and he lacerated his liver. Seen other videos where guys, go into a bog hole or a mud hole, front tire digs in, bike stops, body keeps going forward, and the abdomen slams into the bars. So frontal injuries and side injuries seem to be, pretty common places to land or run into something when you're on a bike. Okay, let's go over the Rally Max here. Here's the Liat 4.5 reference pics that you can see the coverage of that. The Rally Max has quite a bit more extensive coverage, especially in the abdomen area and in the back. So here's the front, and the crossover actually goes down 2 inches further. The back of the Rally Max, the integrated shoulder pads, and the side rib protection, which is fantastic. I have crashed in this. I did a little crash on the CRF 250L where I ran into the rocks in the woods and the bike went down on the side. I kept going forward and I slammed into the end of my bars full speed with my body just to the right of my sternum. It hurt like hell, but I was able to ride out and I didn't break anything. I definitely feel like if I had any other kind of armor on in that one, that could have been a very serious injury being that close to the sternum. Hey, here's Archer. Some questions I get asked about it is it hot? I have pretty low heat tolerance, so 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit for me, I start sweating. The Rally Max is not unbearably hot. I find it much more comfortable than the Liat HD 5.5 or the force field flight armor that I had previously tried. Those, just around the house, you could tell they're going to be hot as hell. The Rally Max, you can let out the sides and you can let it wear loose on you, and you can't let out the sides so far that it will not cover your entire ribs. It breathes pretty well, and it distributes the weight very evenly, so it's not heavy or anything to wear. Even though there's a substantial amount of padding. I mean, the armor is up to 15 millimeters thick in some spots. But because I have low heat tolerance, I also invested in a couple other armors for hotter times of the year, although the Rally Max is always my first pick. But the next one I got was the Techvest crossover. This is essentially the same type of armor, and this one's neck brace compatible, except for it's 2 inches longer in the front. And the rear panel does not have the EVA foam. It has a gray panel or plate of the ultra-high molecular weight plastic, but there is no back armor on this. It's designed and shaped to keep the armor section on the rear off of your back, and the assumption is you're wearing a hydration pack or something like that. In my Kriega Hydra 3 or R15 backpack, I can actually slip in a D30 pad if I want to, or you could just go with your Hydra pack as the armor. But it has the same level of protection everywhere else, except for the shoulder pads are optional. I chose to have them ordered when I got mine. And it's, for all intents and purposes the same, except for it's a little bit different entry to get in and out of it. This would be the next armor I would go to if it's too hot to wear my Rally Max. It is a little bit lighter and it is more breathable than the Rally Max because it doesn't have like the pockets and other cloth materials on the front and back. So it just vents straight through the mesh type stuff. And finally, for my super, super hot weather option, I ordered the Alpine Stars A10 Full Protector. I had to get this from Europe. It wasn't available in the US at the time. But it's CE2 front and back, has CE1 shoulders. You can actually take the shoulders off if you want, and the bicep pads. It is super vented. That's the inside of it right there. Here's a shot of the rib protection. So it does have hard side plates with good foam behind them. It's the inside of the chest. You can see the venting there is tremendous. This is a plate that pops off, makes it neck brace compatible. And here I am acting like a tard on one of the bikes, just so you can see how it looks. And some of the standard poses of the front, the back, and the side. You'll notice that the armor coverage is nowhere as extensive as the Techvest, but there's no free lunch, so for being able to wear it in high heat, you got to give up something. So to summarize my experiences with the armor, with the typical off-road armor, even CE certified stuff like the Liat, where it's a plastic plate with some thin foam behind it. If you have any kind of accident with any kind of speed or force, you're getting bruised. If it's a lot of force, you're definitely getting hurt. And it does not provide much, if any, protection to internal organs in the abdomen below the rib line. The Techvest Rally Max is my first pick. That crash I had where I took the bar into the chest, I should have broken my sternum, but instead I was home that night drinking coffee and hanging out with Archer. When it's too hot for that, I'll switch to the crossover, and I usually wear my R15 backpack, and I'll just throw in the D3O pad. And if it's too hot for that, then I'm switching to the Alpine Stars A10. And if it's any hotter than that outside, it's too hot for me to be out there. And when I talk about my heat tolerance, it's low, so keep in mind that if you're deciding on armor. Maybe add 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and that would be a normal person's tolerance for heat. Don't forget to check the description in the video. I have links to my reviews of these armors on ADV Rider. We got quite extensive with the measurements of all the armor coverage and comparisons between different ones like the Liat 5.5, etc. And there's a ton of comparison photos you can look at on there. If you have any questions, just post them up in the comments. I'll see you.